Hey there, I'm Neil. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the host of my new podcast, Pause and Rewind. I'll be chatting to changemakers, thought leaders, and role models who all share a common goal. They're striving to make the world a more inclusive place. And let's face it, we need it. Each guest has a unique story when it comes to doing their thing, and we often know who people are in the now. But how much do we really know about them? Pause and Rewind takes a moment to explore the experiences in my guest's life that led them to where and who they are now. Because everyone loves an origin story. We'll dive into tales, anecdotes, and what makes our guests tick. So, are you ready to pause and rewind? Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pause and Rewind. In this episode, I get to chat to someone who has just been such a massive source of support to me, particularly with kind of co-launching the House of Happiness back in 2022. And that is Laura Willoughby. Laura is the co-founder of Club Soda, the world's largest mindful drinking movement. They have been phenomenal in changing so many people's relationships with alcohol, encouraging people to adapt to a healthier lifestyle when it comes to drinking and either embracing a moderate lifestyle or even going alcohol free. And Laura has just been such a source of support, and just a brilliant person to know. Now, I knew a little bit about Laura. I knew bits about her background in politics, but diving straight into her origin story was just a lovely opportunity to get to know her better. But I just want to give a shout out. I mean, Laura has just been named as the top in the top 100, the number 11th and biggest influencer in the drinks industry. And I don't mean influencer in a wanky sense. She is literally making massive changes across the industry, and it's phenomenal. So yeah, it's just a brilliant conversation. Those of you who I know through kind of like being sober Neil and running the House of Happiness and just the phenomenal sober community out there will really, really love this episode. But there's so much to take for everyone. We talk lots about, little Laura and this kind of like strong activist and campaigner from a young age. And yeah, seeing that through now and the way that she uses her voice, not just for sober inclusion, but all the wonderful changes that she has made from her days working in government and in councils and such. So enjoy the episode. Let me know what you think. Cheers. Laura, welcome to Pause and Rewind.
Hello.
It's so good to see you. You're right.
I was wondering if that you ever show visuals of this. Will you actually do us in rewind?
No, actually, I don't have any kind of like rewind
Gosh,
motions or anything. I
I
kept it
thought
quite
that
light.
should be your thing.
Okay, right. I'll think about it. Laura, what is
Yeah.
the world like for you right now?
What's the world like for me right now? Slightly stressful, very busy. I have this massive to-do list in my head, which I think I've always had, but it's even longer now, and I don't know how I'm going to get through it. And I'm hoping to have the weekend off. So when if you've got a really busy life and you've got a weekend off, you feel you have to squeeze even more. That's where I am right now.
Yeah, I'm the same. And I don't leave it at one thing either. Like if I'm going vaguely in the direction of someone else that I'm visiting, I will latch on another visit or I'll throw
Yeah,
something
I do
else
that.
in.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure about you, but because I live in London and you don't have a car, I have this problem that whenever I have access to a car, I don't just go, here's a journey I'm going to do in the car. I go, oh, if I'm doing that, I could pop into IKEA here. Does anyone need anything dropping off? Do I collect something else? Shall we do this and that? And everyone looks at me like I'm completely mad because I'm like, right, how do we make the most of this capacity in this period of time? I think it's probably a personality thing. So.
I hear you. I hear you. How are things with Club Soda?
Well, it's an interesting time. I'm not sure if you find this yourself, Neil, but when you're motivated by wanting to solve problems in the world, you there's lots of particular ways you can do it, and I tend to want to do all of them at once.
Yep.
And they're not necessarily very monetizable. So that's also quite hard. And so things that I think are a jolly good idea aren't always easy to do because there's not always the money to do them with. So Club Soda continues to be, and it's nearly 10 years old, continues to be a challenge.
I mean, it is the world's largest mindful drinking movement, and it
I
is
don't quite know what
phenomenal.
that means, Neil, but it's definitely big and
It's
lots of
there.
people.
And it's gone through so many variations as well. Obviously, it's gone from being kind of like an online community. It's been a book. It's now an off-license shop and event space. It's
I know.
amazing.
I know. Well, that could either be seen as a good thing or a bad thing, don't you think? That's either I haven't done the business advice of doing one thing and doing it well, or I'm easy adaptable and we can pivot. I don't know. Either of those things are true.
Two things can be true at once. I
I
just want to
hope.
take a moment to say huge congrats on being named number 11 in the top 100 influential people in the drinks industry.
I know when I gave up drinking, which is 12 years ago as we speak, who would have thought that that would have been the case? Because I did not see that coming. It was not even a distant thought on the horizon. I had given up drinks. I was walking away from that, and now I spend all of my time at actually really some quite boozy events. It's quite hilarious.
And how does that feel? How does that feel now with like the Laura that we know?
It's strange really because what it says to me is that all of this stuff that I've been banging on about for the last 10 years is beginning to resonate and penetrate in a community. It also tells me that if you hang around an industry long enough, then you can begin to make a name for yourself because you're there and you're consistent and you're talking, which is really fascinating for anyone who might be thinking about changing their career. Um, and then the last bit of it is it sends me into a blind panic because I think, right, what do I do with this? What does it really mean?
Yeah.
And how can I leverage this to do the things that I think are important? And how do I make sure I keep focused on those? Keeping focused on things being a big issue.
That's it. Because I mean, kind of, credentials like that, they are testament to your hard work. And it's not just that accolade as well. You've got your MBE.
Yeah, I got that a long time ago, so it feels really weird. I sort of forget I have it, and then occasionally people um to look at me and say, "Oh, you've got an MBA," and I go, "Oh, yes." And I used to put it on the end of my name because I was young when I got it. I was 30 when I got it, so it made me look more grown up and more accomplished. And now it's basically the same as every other 50-year-old, right? In public service has probably got one. So now I look like I'm growing into the title.
Just leave it there. It looks good. It looks great. I'm so, so excited to speak to you about your origin story. But I just want to say, this podcast is all about people that are creating inclusion in the world, right? And when it comes to sober inclusion, you are so up there for me. Like you have been such a massive source of support and inspiration with launching the House of Happiness and everything we do. So I just wanted to take a moment to say that because, the work that Club Soda does, but you spearheading a lot of that with a fantastic team as well. It's just made massive changes.
Yeah, it's I think there's there's one thing I can say about myself, which is that I really enjoy collaborating.
Mm.
Working with other people to make things happen really floats my boat. And so the thought that you might end up doing that without any support or without connecting you to the right people and make other people, um, take hard roads when they don't need to, right? When you've got some of the answers seems ridiculous to me. So, I'm always really happy to help anybody. I think things progress quicker if we all help each other.
Absolutely. Well, I definitely see that in the way that you work with people, from us with the House of Happiness through to other people like, Cece, who's launching Maniac, Cece's a sober entrepreneur launching a queer makeup brand. And yeah, I definitely see that in you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's more fun.
It
You get to
is.
meet
It's so
lovely,
much
nice
more.
people.
Yeah. And I haven't got any time for gatekeeping. It's about lifting each other up and supporting each other.
Yeah, and the flip side of that is I often give away things that I could charge for free to people who can afford it. I don't care about people who can't afford it. I'm happy to do the things that are necessary. But yeah, so it's a constant battle between values and value, right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
So and I'm not very motivated by massive financial reward, but I do need to keep my cats in premium ethical cat food. So,
Little pampered princesses, are they?
yes.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Let's chat before we launch into your origin story. Let's chat sober inclusion. How have you seen it change since you first launched?
Well, I mean, it's amazing, really. When I first started Club Soda, it was because I felt that there wasn't anybody talking about changing drinking on your own terms. There was either something like AA, but there wasn't anything that was saying, you can cut down, you can stop for a bit, you can quit. It's up to you. Here's some tools that help you do that. And so we started off as health tech. And the thing about me is that ultimately I've been a lifelong campaigner. And the minute people started to say to me, well, there's nothing interesting to drink in pubs and bars, so how do we navigate the social space? I wanted to do something about that. My brain went, way, here's a problem. We can solve this. This would be really exciting. We could do some research, which is what we did. And so it's come a long way, not because I did anything in particular, but there is a bit about timing, right? So alcohol-free drinks started to hit the market in the start of 2017, which is 2 years after we launched. And the fact that I'd already started talking about it meant that when it did come, I was a good place for people to come and ask about it. And then we did our first festival in 2017. And for me, there's a real simple thing really, which is that if you want to change a habit, switching the thing that you were doing for something else is probably one of the easiest and most powerful things you can do. So if you're on a diet, switch that chocolate bar for a banana. I'm sure it's just as satisfying.
Do
And
not.
but switching an alcoholic drink for an alcohol-free one, as long as you can find one that you really like, is one of the easiest switches you can make. And alongside that then becomes a narrative for us around what is socializing, how do you make people feel welcome, what is the quality of experience that you're offering, how can places begin to do that. And in some respects we are pushing against an open door. It's a big one and it needs a little bit more pushing, but the fact that you can see that we're a far more experience-led culture than we've ever been, and it's the experience, not the drink, that's the most important thing, growing more and more. I mean, if you'd told me when I was 22 and moved to London that there would be dessert shops open to midnight and bubble tea would actually be the fastest growing drink, and that you would pay to play darts at places like Flight Club, and even that you could every pub would have food in it, we would have probably all laughed. But that shows that over time we are changing as a culture, and making everyone feel like they're having a great and equal time is part of that. And I think one of the last things to come into place is the fact that we're a very alcohol-led culture, and making sure that if people want to moderate or go alcohol-free, and moderation is still the biggest, most dominant behavior in this space, that everyone feels that they've got a choice. And, it comes down to small things. Like I went to a dinner last night and the person running the dinner wanted to make sure that there was alcohol free because, they've known me a long time and they knew that this is important. It's important to them. But they still treated me like I was gluten intolerant. So the drink was put to one side. It wasn't
Right.
there for everyone to drink if they were choosing not to drink and moderate. So you're either drinking alcohol, water, or Laura, because she's put it on the dietary preferences, get something and it will be poured specially for them and it will be bought from out the back. It won't be on the tray. So, we've got a long way to go on that being a reality, but it is moving. And there were no alcohol-free drinks when I gave up drinking 12 years ago, but there's loads now. So there's no excuse anymore.
It's a fab selection. And if you haven't, plug here, get yourself down to Club Soda in Covent Garden.
Yeah, and it's a tasting room for a reason, because we want you to try
Yeah.
before you buy and find something you like. And we want to, surprise you, really.
Yeah. And ultimately, people are looking for that experience of belonging, right? Getting people out their houses, getting people to spend money these days is actually like, cost of living crisis. People are looking for something else. People are working from home. So when an event, whether hospitality, tourism, or what's on offer in the supermarkets can create that sense of belonging and inclusion, people are more likely to invest.
Yeah, and if we think about hospitality as a whole, and I spend a lot of time in this space, people are going out earlier and going home earlier. And so, things are beginning to shift in terms of our cultural landscape. I've noticed that the National Theatre now has some 6:30 p.m. start times for shows, which is brilliant. You don't have that hour of hanging around going, well, I should eat something, but I don't really want to spend loads of money, but I still want to go to the theatre. It's brilliant. And then you go home earlier and get into bed.
Yes.
Yay! So I think we're beginning to shift and realize that not only do you need to accommodate neurodiverse showings and sign language showings and audio described showings, but different times and relaxed viewings and all of those things all come into the mix.
Yeah, well, it's only ever going to be a good thing. And like you said, there's work to be done on all of it when we talk about inclusion more broadly, but it's happening.
Yeah, and also we're not, taking away any alcohol. We're just adding more in.
Yes, this crap about kind of like, catering for some people means that you get less than.
Yeah, it's not the case at all. It reminds me a bit, I've done a lot of work on disability access, and if you make disabled access work, it's good for everyone. Well, alcohol-free drinks are good for everyone because people just have more
Yep.
choice.
Yeah. And then, I was on a podcast the other day talking about workplace culture and alcohol and the damage that it can do,
Yeah.
not just risky situations, but productivity and the way language is used and all kinds of
Yeah,
things.
and I spoke to somebody last night who said, "Oh, we always give a bottle of something as a thank you or as a gift or as a sorry." And then I gave one to somebody last week and they said they don't drink, and I realized that was a really awful gift to give, and I need to rethink that.
Yeah.
Yep. But
Yep.
we can't do it if these changes don't happen, if those realizations become one gifting experience at a time. We need to build that into our structures, and that's how systems change happens.
Oh, I feel like there's an article in that or something about, mindset shift when it comes to gifting and events in particular.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Just always remembering that everybody's drinking habits don't mirror your own.
exactly.
But give me chocolate and it'll be fine, everyone.
Ab
Just in
oh,
case you're ever wondering.
I always say
Or
to people,
as Neil knows, 3 jars of lovely
truffle
truffle
marmite.
marmite that you dropped him because I can't find any more at the supermarket. It's
Oh,
always good.
if I see any, I'll grab it. I always say to people when people say to me, "Oh, you eat a lot of chocolate, don't you?" I'm like, I've given up drink, I've given up drugs, I've given up cigarettes. If I want a fucking bar of chocolate or a Red Bull, I'm gonna have it.
I know, but after I gave up drinking, my Red Bull consumption went mile high
Yeah,
because I
yeah,
wanted the energy.
yeah.
Not only was I feeling more energetic, but I wanted more of that energy. So it's now my occasional treat, but
Occasional, yeah.
I have to really keep an eye on it.
Absolutely. There's lots of people like that, me included. Laura, are you ready to pause and rewind?
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do this. Take me back. Tell me all about little Laura.
Oh God. Oh, like that. It's funny. I listen to Desert Island Discs a lot, and I think, what would I say in these parts? And then I just ignore it and move back on and try not to think about my past. But I grew up in the Southwest, to parents who, for a short while ran a pub, but also worked a lot in factories and that sort of stuff. And I lived in Somerset and couldn't wait to get away, really, like most people from the place that you grew up in. But I do remember my first political act, which was when I was 11, and it's a really ironic political act, Neil, which is that we were going to a trip to London with the school and we had to write to, there were all sorts of things organised. And one of them was that the teachers wanted us to write to go and visit some of the football stadiums. And so I volunteered to write to the football stadiums because otherwise it would have been all boys writing. And so I think I wrote to Chelsea and they said no to a visit, but Arsenal said yes to somebody else. And then I realised that no girls were going to go on the tour of the football stadium. So I spent the most boring afternoon of my life looking around the Arsenal football stadium on principle, because otherwise no girls would have gone. It would have only been boys. So I remember this act very keenly, because then if you fast forward to when I was 23, or 24, I was cabinet member for sports and culture in Islington, responsible for the rebuild of the Arsenal stadium. So I have this strange allegiance to Arsenal, from this and my politics came full circle. So that was me. I don't know why. I don't come from a political family or a family that necessarily stands up and waves and to be counted, to be honest. But I do, come from a family where my grandmother was very principled, a lot of Catholicism within that, but actually mostly around fairness. And the same with with my grandfather. So something I think came from that idea of fairness and equality from a very early age. They were certainly a very poor family that had managed to work themselves up to better status through education and a lot of sacrifice, and that has clearly featured in my life as I've grown older. So yeah.
Yeah. It's funny how that sense of fairness in some of us appears without necessarily there being an obvious route for it.
Yeah, and it took me a while to realize that that was such a strong because if you've got, my grandmother was a strong Catholic, and you can sometimes you dismiss, as I probably did, that a lot of what they did as being related to religion and not around who they were themselves. And actually, my nan's fairness and value system overruled her Catholicism, actually. And she, oh, the cat feed has just gone off. Did you hear that?
I did.
You might have. Anyway, sorry about that.
You're all good.
It's feeding time, automatic cat feeding time. They get to hear my voice. So my grandmother, even she died when she was 96, would continue to talk about the fact that she worked really hard to get through secretarial college, but the rich girls who went through secretarial college, who were obviously destined to get married and not work in the near future, were always allowed the weekend off to go to their country home. And whereas my nan had to stay and work in the Bristol and West, typing things, and never got the weekend off. And, those small things that I know about her and her sense of injustice around that are things that clearly really affected me in my career. And again, with my grandfather around workers' rights in factories, but also, the competing issues around trade unions that there were in Bristol. I always got a very strong sense of that from him as well. So yeah.
And also, I guess that work ethic as well. I mean, you slog hard.
Yeah, I've got, we're a family of sloggers, definitely. My brothers, my mum is still working. She turns 70 next year. She likes to do the 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. slot in home bargains even though she could do loads of other things as well. But for some reason, she likes doing that. I don't quite know. I think she likes the power of opening the boxes and getting those shelves stacked. So yeah.
Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. Laura, what are some of your perhaps favorite anecdotes that you've been told about yourself growing up?
Well, my mum loves to share that I won junior princess on the holiday camp when I was 5, which for anyone who knows me, anyone who's looking, princess is not a word that I would use to describe myself. I get very upset about the use of the word ladies and lady, for
Oh, I
example.
hate
It's
who
women's football, not
it's
ladies football.
absolutely. I wish people that's a term that needs to get in the bin.
I know, but I also find myself using it sometimes when I'm chairing. I go, oh, that lady over there, and then I have to correct myself because it's so ingrained in our language. So, I
It
know I
really
use
is.
it too. But I won Junior Princess, as my mum reminds me, not because I was the prettiest girl on the stage, although crap mother, honestly. Obviously, I was the prettiest girl on the stage, but
Ovs.
because I was the loudest girl on the stage. So everyone else went and meekly said, I'm so and so, and I'm from so and so. And I went, I'm Laura, and I'm from Chard. And I think she says that's why I won it. I think that was probably an omen for the future, which was, I may not be the prettiest girl or the girliest girl or any of those things, but I'd be the loudest.
The loudest, hardest working with a real sense of fairness and injustice. Let's talk
Yeah.
about your sense of self. When what do you remember of growing up around when you first looked at the world around you and thought like, who am I in all this?
It was definitely around equalities, actually. So I I remember writing a small play when I was in my first year at secondary school. Actually, it was about marriage and why it was terrible. This is why nobody wants to marry me. I seem to just permeate this view. I don't want to get married, by the way. But anyway, but it was definitely about a relationship and trying to define that relationship and why women weren't equal in relationships to men. And not long after that, I ran the equalities stand at every single school fair after that. I also remember in my first year at secondary school that there was we had mock elections at the school. So the sixth formers came down, and it was at the height of the HIV period. And I think everyone was taken aback by a 12-year-old asking questions about HIV at Hustings at a school mock election, which I realise now that I know about Section 28 was probably a very difficult thing actually for a school to deal with.
Yeah, of course.
So I obviously took an interest in news. I definitely felt that there was an inequality around gender, and a lot of that then permeated what I did. And then when I was 13, I set up the environment committee at school. I mean, I had my own notice board at school for that entirety of my secondary school
Your
career.
own?
Yeah, it was mine for my environment committee. I would spend my lunch hours crushing cans for recycling, which was very new back then. They didn't even have anywhere to put them. Had to use an old coal storage area. And I had an environmental theme, anti-vivisection theme, rubbish collection theme that in the end had to be taken down because the rubbish that I'd stuck to the wall actually ended up smelling. I was an activist from a really young age. I apologize to my school now and my teachers. I was a real pain in the ass. I even boycotted PE because they wouldn't let me play rugby or football, and I was able to get away with it. And I used to sit in the library during PE sessions because I didn't want to play netball. I wanted to play. I played rugby till I was 11. I wanted to carry on.
I
So
love that. I love that. I love how we're seeing these little traits of yours, kind of like hearing about you coming through in who you are. What happened next?
Um, so I think all of that spilled into, and if you think about school life, it's really interesting because it's full of different cliques and groups of people. But I was friends with lots of different people, and I think part of that was because if people had a problem, they'd come to me and I would try and solve it. So I was definitely known as someone who could solve problems. I remember there was a problem in the sixth form with our common room, and no one went to speak to the teachers themselves. Everyone came to me to do that. And so when I look back, it's that advocacy on behalf of others that was very strong for me. But then saying that, I did finally run in the mock elections when I was in sixth form, and somebody ran a whole campaign which is called "Don't vote for Laura, she'll only put it on her CV," which of course is absolutely true. It went on my CV. So
Damn right it did.
yeah, so I stood for Parliament twice, so I had to get through some hustings. So, it was always a good joke to share. I guess so that's how school was characterized for me, and then actually university ended up being a big disappointment. I
Yeah.
absolutely hated where I chose and where I went, and I made the wrong decision, which I guess quite a few people of my age probably did, because if you're the
I
first people in your family to go to university,
Yep.
I went to the university that my grandmother cleaned at and my uncle's a security guard at. I should have gone to a more urban university. It was full of Loughborough at that time was full of sexist. Oh, you definitely shouldn't go to a university just to piss off your PE teacher as well, because obviously Loughborough was the biggest PE. Yeah, I hadn't done PE
That's
for 4 years.
hilarious.
The look on my PE teacher's face when I said I'd got into Loughborough was just brilliant. I wish I could have taken that picture. But I thought I wanted a campus university, but actually I needed an urban
Yeah.
university with lots of arts and critical thinking, not a course that was designed for the first team rugby players to do. But I also desperately didn't want to go home, so I stuck it out. I then took a year out to run student union at Somerset College for a year and came back and finished and managed to get a good degree by subverting it, really. I think that's what the year out taught me, was that change everything to something you wanted to write about. So I actually did my dissertation on career progression of women in stand-up comedy, because if any comedian had gone to Loughborough in the early to mid 90s, they didn't get a single joke out of their mouth before they were heckled off the stage. And
Yeah,
I
I've
was
heard
I was
that.
there going, I would like to watch this, please. Thank you very much. I don't want you making that decision for me. So I just lent into something that I was really passionate about and made that my dissertation, which I think probably saved my degree from having made the wrong decision, but also being very petulant and not wanting to go back to Somerset.
What did you study?
Communication and media studies, which in
And what
reality wasn't anything because it that no one even cared if you turned up. Which, to be fair, you will hear in the theme of my life is a really bad position for me to be in.
there?
People,
What was the goal? What was the original goal?
I think I loved communication studies at A level. The school put on communication studies A level to keep me in sixth form because I was going to go to the local college otherwise. I really enjoyed media studies and communications, and so I really like the idea of working for an advertising agency. Um, but saying that, when I was 14, I turned up to Paddy Ashdown's advice surgery to ask him how to become an MP. And then I became secretary of our community association for our estate. And then I spent some time knocking on doors during elections. And also, I mean, do not I feel embarrassed saying this, but do not underestimate that there wasn't many weeks that I wasn't in the local newspaper. I I so I ran the environment committee at school. I got some funding for tree planting. I was secretary of the community association. I ran campaigns on all sorts of things from VAT on sanitary products. I don't even know how I found out about them. How do we find out about those without the internet, Neil? I do not understand how I knew. And then we ran this amazing festival in Chard, run by an amazing woman called Angela Wills, which was an international music festival, but it was the international music, it was the Chard Festival of Women in Music, and it was the first ever international festival of women in music that this amazing woman had brought to our town. Oh my God, the misery of that town over this bloody festival. You'd have thought you'd have asked them to, eat their firstborn, that we'd invited lots of women, some with very short hair, to camp on the rugby field. And why do we want this sort of stuff anyway? But I was on the organising committee and it was amazing. And I still meet people now who were part of that festival, including my partner's ex-partner who performed there. And, and it has this amazing international repercussions. I was part of that when I was 16 and when I was 18. I created the program. Oh my God, it's a real shit design, but they let me do it. I don't know why they let me do it, but I created and got printed the program. So I'm a doer, and
Yeah.
you know, I I wanted things to happen.
And
And
you do make shit happen. Do you look back now and think that all of that spurred where you are now?
yeah, absolutely. To me, it all felt very normal.
Yeah.
Um, and and why wouldn't you do these things? I didn't understand why other people didn't do them. I
Yeah.
remember when we had work experience, I spent a lot of time. There aren't many advertising agencies in Somerset, I have to tell you. So I tried very hard to get a really good work experience. And I ended up making beds in the local travel lodge for only 2 days before Mum said, "Jack it in. You've got work experience with Paddy Ashdown in a few weeks. I'm not paying the bus fare for you to go and learn to make beds." And so we had this big fight with the school over that. And in the end, Mum says, "We've got no time for this. She's got minutes to finish for the local community association."
That's
So,
incredible.
so I guess all of these, to me, these all seemed normal. Why wouldn't you do all these things with your time? But I guess it also could be quite stressful. And I remember feeling quite stressed and responsible for things when I was younger as well. So, and I worked from the age of 11. I've just my friend said to me, "Oh, well, I've got another who's the same age as me, said, I've got another 8 years of pension contributions to make before I can think about changing work." And so I went in to look at mine. I don't have any more because I've been paying tax since I was 14.
Incredible. You know what? So much of what you've just said resonates with me because I started work at a really young age. I cleaned my old school. I went to a small Christian
Oh
school,
yeah.
and I cleaned it for £6 to clean the whole fucking three-story school. But that was at 11, 12 years old,
Yeah.
and I've just always had this work ethic. And people said
You
to me
can't
then in the
work
States,
now. You
"No,
can't
no,
work. You're not allowed
yeah,
to work if you're under 16. But I I
it
I
taught me
worked
so
in the
much."
I worked 25 hours a week in the fish and chip shop from the age of 14.
Yeah.
And I was doing Friday and Saturday waitressing from the age of 11 because we had the pub when I was 11. So, you help in a family business. And then when we moved out of there, I went and waited tables elsewhere.
It's
So,
mad, isn't it? But
and
to
I
be,
worked 25 hours a week during university as well. I worked nearly full time.
and that capacity that drive to constantly achieve, right? Because it's not always healthy. We know that. Like we've had conversations around kind of like, overwhelm and burnout and stress and
Yeah.
but I can't keep a lid on it.
No, I can't either. But it's also not about you talk about the desire to achieve, and it's not necessarily achieving, it's about doing,
To do him.
and feeling that if there's a problem, it can be sorted.
Yeah,
And there was a point when I was drinking my most, which was when I was in a job where no one cared, I turned up. You can see a theme here for me that needing to feel needed and
yeah,
wanted. It's really, really important. I began to question whether I was a campaigner at all because,
okay.
it'd been such a fundamental part of me. And then they tried to get rid of the moped bay near where I worked. And I'd got a petition up and out within like 2 minutes. I was like, oh yeah, this is me, isn't it? This is me. I'm just gonna have to refined that, and that's what I refound when I gave up drinking. I refound that part of me that had slowly been disappearing, and it's okay to lean back into actually recognizing who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah,
But yeah,
for sure. And you can definitely, I would definitely say that the me now is more me than I've ever been. It's more
yeah.
me that's related. It's more me that goes back to the kid that I was and kind of doing all sorts and
Yeah, I always
yeah,
say that giving up drinking made me feel like I was when I moved to London, and
yeah,
reconnected me with my values. The one thing I would say though is overwork is very much like being hungover a lot, because the same things happen to you. You are an inability to form sentences and concentrate and all of those
absolutely.
sorts of things. So that it's interesting.
I definitely feel that. Let's just tap back into your early career then. Obviously, I know you're very political. What came before Club Soda?
Well, I got elected when I was 23 onto Islington Council. And it was at the time when Labour were in government. And they had been running Islington Council terribly for a long time. And so I got elected at 23, but we took control of the council when I was 25 in a by-election. And so I became a cabinet member. The leader of the council, the Lib Dem who was leader of the council at that time, was an amazing, inspirational person for me. And I learned so much from him. And he gave me many opportunities. And so I became a cabinet member. So I was a full-time politician for 4 years. And in that time, I also became chair of the Local Government Association's Equalities Executive. So I was overseeing equalities for the whole of local government across the UK. And that included the introduction of civil partnerships and all of that sort of stuff as well. Um, but in local government, lots of things happen alongside each other. So before I became a full-time cabinet member, I also worked at Stonewall as their press officer. I started on the day that the ban on gays in the military went, and I oversaw the press for equal age of consent, basically, which was amazing. A really highly political time in Stonewall, well before it offered services like it does now. So it was a much smaller organisation. It was also an organisation where I wasn't allowed to say that I was bisexual because it would ruin the argument that people were born gay and therefore they couldn't be helped, which was the key plank of um, the argument at that time. And it's actually amazing to see how much that narrative has moved on. I hadn't actually quite realised it until we got a lot more younger queer people into the organisation, and I'd stepped out of it for so long. I stepped back and I was like, oh, my people are finally here. It was
Amazing.
amazing. So it wasn't all plain sailing in Stonewall, but lots of political stuff. And then when I came off the cabinet on the council, I then was chief exec of an HIV charity called the Food Chain for a short while. And then I went to the local government association as an advisor, which was the job that I hated and nearly killed me probably, and got stuck in because I was in a cycle of I must give up drinking, and then I was drinking more because I wasn't enjoying it. And I thought I needed to give up drinking to get out of that job, but I actually needed to get out of that job to give up drinking. And I made a good decision to take on a temporary secondment to basically close down the National Campaign for the Arts because it had run its course and hadn't quite been run very well. And that allowed me to get out of that job. But I also gave up drinking when I did that because suddenly I was in the world of arts, which I'm very passionate about, and I didn't want to fuck it up, basically.
Do you miss the political side of life?
Absolutely. I spend all of my time looking at which parliamentary seats are up for selection in the Lib Dems. But I'd love to run a council, but I am a Lib Dem and I don't think I could be any other party in the current political system. And so um, that leaves you fewer chances.
Mhm.
And although it suits me down to the ground on being somebody who can work really hard for no reward, because Lib Dems can work very hard and still not get elected. Oh my word, how I cannot tell you how hard elections are as one of the not if you're not one of the main two parties. And so yeah, it can take a lot of time and energy, and you can still do really, really badly.
Harder than running club soda?
Say that again, sorry, I've got
Harder than running club soda?
equally hard. Different things in different ways. Um, with uh, but it would take as much time. And as Club Soda takes all my time right now, I don't know how I would fit it in. What I need is a nice little by-election because that's a nice short campaign. And
Yes.
also I can't afford to, for if you're a candidate in a target seat for a small party, then you end up, really jeopardizing you could really do with it having made enough money that you can take time off from work.
Who knows what the future will hold?
Who knows?
Who knows? Was there perhaps a moment that felt like a failure that has led you to where you are now?
I think it's a really interesting question because I'm not very good at reflecting, and I'm really bad at reflecting on my successes. I find it really hard to even write a CV. I do think that the not at the end of my time at the food chain, I was clearly there were issues around the relationship with some trustees. I was their first ever chief exec, but I also realised that I was suffering from I was also dealing with grief at the time that I didn't quite understand. And I think not dealing with that meant that I got stuck somewhere that I didn't belong and wasn't right for me. And then I couldn't find a way out. And so that put me into a very low place. And I think um, maybe my ability to reflect a bit better may have helped me see that. But I ended up in quite a lonely and very isolated place because if you're in an employment situation where nobody cares if you turn up, you're basically not with any colleagues either, and so nobody's really noticing anything about you either. So I think that's really interesting, and I grappled around for a long time to try to find a sense of purpose in that job. And actually, what I should have done is got out as quickly as possible, but I then wasn't in the mental place to do that. So
But you got out.
yes, and I'd like to work out how I finally managed to make that decision and do something about it. But like most things in life, it is a series of um, accidentally coincidental things that happen. And actually, it's because my friend who I'd been helping through depression had got a job, and I met somebody through him who suggested the secondment who I got really well with. So it's all about connections and meeting people and people who will, sometimes they don't have to give you a big nudge along the way. Just a suggestion or an idea can spark something. So
That
yeah.
leads me perfect segue into the next question, which was who's kind of the person that shaped you the most along the way?
I think there's quite a few people, but Steve Hitchens, who was leader of Islington Council, absolutely. I learned so much about leadership from him. And now I'm going to cry
It's okay.
as he died a few years ago. Um, lots of very strong political people, and also like Helen Bailey, who's currently the chief exec of Sutton Council, but is now was chief exec of Islington. Phenomenal woman who I also learned a lot from and still do. I still meet up with her and she gives me great advice. I was also really lucky to be part of a political party that really values younger people's voices. So when you're involved in politics, when you're younger, it's easy for people to dismiss you and say, "Oh, well, we've tried that before," and la di la di la. The Lib Dems weren't like that at least when I was there, and they gave me a lot of freedom to do stuff. And you know, and I think if you're a doer in politics, you can do quite well in terms of getting yourself into positions of responsibility and power, which I think I did. So if you're willing to put in that time. So there's lots of amazing people in the Lib Dems for which I owe an awful lot. But certainly Steve Hitchens and Helen Bailey are a key part of that. Um, and then, everybody from Angela Wills, who did the Charge Festival of Women in Music, and even the deputy head of the school, who, let me sit in the library during PE lessons because they'd given up trying to get me to go. And, instead, made me help with the timetabling for the following year and do other jobs to not get away with doing nothing. So I was really lucky to have teachers who taught me lots of things, and that included my drama teacher. Drama is a real big thing for me, who I'm still connected with, and love to go and see plays with when we get an opportunity. So yeah,
What, how amazing is that to have
lots
so
of
many
people.
people, lots of people who have had beautiful influence on you. And it's totally, it's good to reflect on all those people that have changed your life and also
Yeah.
seeing how generous you are with your time, and you and the way you pay that forward.
Yeah, and I think, all the people that have been the most influenced in my life, and there are many of them, have all been people that have been not only generous with their time, but generous by not judging.
Yeah,
Because I do realize, and you can see it in politics right now, which is that, people who are older or have different life perspectives currently don't give people space to share their lived stories and instead believe that there's an absolute right. And it happens on all political sides. And therefore, we've ended up with a very polarized political system. My friend Ali Goldsworthy is doing some great work on this right now. Um, we can't accept that, and I think about this stuff a lot around the gender debate at the minute, but we can't accept the fact that things are moving on and that it's some of the brilliant things that my generation have done that have led to a younger generation thinking the way they do. And that's to be celebrated, not, shot down.
absolutely, absolutely. What are you most proud of to date?
I also find this question really hard. Because I always feel it's not enough. Everything I do is still not enough. We're not there yet. It's not enough. I should have done that. I could have done that better. I'm very, very self-critical. God knows how I managed to get through drinking. 'Cause God, that makes me even more
It does,
self-critical.
it
I
does.
just do
I'm
not.
much less now. I'm much less now
Yeah.
that yeah.
But I'm proud of the fact um, it's small things sometimes. Like I'm in Newham right now, and you can't recycle your food, but you can in Islington, and you can do that in Islington because of me and my colleagues on Islington Council back in the mid-90s, because there were Lib Dems on the North London Waste Authority, and when we redid the contract, we put in as much recycling as we possibly could. Whereas in East London, that didn't happen. So I was talking to somebody else about this last night at a dinner, actually, because who used to be a leader of the Labour leader of council in Lewisham, about the fact that there's all these small tentacles that I see. I'm still a member of Zipcar, that used to be City Car Club, that we gave free bays to at the very beginning. So sometimes it's those really small things that you wouldn't really notice because, when you make decisions in councils, you don't always see how it will pan out. And, often they're decisions about reducing spending on things because ultimately local councils are rationing authorities. But in amongst it are decisions you've made that transform places and can shape places. And you can see those that, and sometimes they can take, 10, 15 years to come to fruition.
That's amazing. And those things are huge.
Yeah, they are. They are. And I'm really proud. And again, if you talk about being collaborative, what I like about local government compared to, being an MP is you're always working with a team of councillors. You've got 2 or 3 councillors per ward, and then you're part of a group that might be 20 of you, and you've all got different roles, and you have group decision making, and that allows you to not only for better decisions, but allows you to do that as part of a team. And if you get that team right, and you get the diversity of that team right, and um, Islington was the only local authority that had a women majority on the council, but also we had the most diverse council in the country at one point, because we had council tenants on the group. We had people from different backgrounds. We had, a heavily disabled mayor, for example, who, needed a full-time carer and had the biggest wheelchair in the world. They actually had to change the lift in Islington Town Hall for her. So, all of those things I'm really proud of, because bringing different people into decision making means that government makes better decisions.
Absolutely. That's phenomenal. I'm glad you've taken a moment to reflect on that, even if it's not the most comfortable thing to do.
No, I know. I need to do uh it's that journaling thing we talked about at the beginning. I'm pretty sure if I did some journaling, but it involves using a pen and paper. So, I've got two ideologies that clash. I'm not very good at that. So, but if I did a bit more reflecting, it might be more useful.
Oh, thank you for doing it with me.
Thank you.
The House of Happiness is London's ultimate sober clubbing extravaganza. We're led and delivered but created for all, whether teetotal, sober curious, or just taking a booze snooze. We love a day rave, and on a Saturday afternoon you can expect banging house tunes, DJs on decks, dancers on podiums, and a fully stocked alcohol-free bar. Flamboyant, bold, with a glitter station to boot. We're all about safe, inclusive fun, and we even have a pre-meet so that you can make new sober buddies before you hit the dance floor. Grab your tickets from Instagram now at House of Happiness Official, and we'll see you on the dance floor. I've got some quick fire questions for you.
All right then.
What album, book, or movie has had a lasting impact on you?
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is my favorite book of all time.
It's a great book and a
Um,
great film. Do you
it,
like
it
the
was,
film?
well, it started as a radio play. I listened to him with my mother, and then my friend recorded them all onto old tapes for me for my 16th birthday. And I'm a big audiobook listener. So I have been listening, first of all, to tapes and then CDs all of my life as I go to sleep and everywhere and anywhere. But if I'm ever overly stressed or can't sleep and really anxious, I just go and listen to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And it just brings me to this really lovely, calm place. But I can also tell you exactly where I was where Douglas Adams died. So, it's been a big part of my life.
Can I ask why?
I don't know really. I think it's science fiction. I quite like Tick, but it's also funny. Tick.
It's very funny.
I listened to it on the radio with my mother, and I was, when you were listening to music when you were a teenager, Neil, I was listening to Radio 4. My mum came and cut the plug off my stereo once because I wouldn't come down for dinner, not because I was blaring out music, but because I was listening to Radio 4. I think radio is my biggest passion, and so that coziness of listening to something that's very personal. And so I think because that was the first audio play that I listened to constantly on repeat, and I don't often listen to things again or watch things again. I just think it's become this reassuring thing. And anyone who went to university with me talks about the fact that if they shared a halls of residence with me, all they could hear was this constant low-level drone from my room because I was always listening to radio plays and they were all listening to music.
I love that. I love that. I
But
adore the song "So Long and Thanks for All the Fish" from the
yeah,
soundtrack. It's such a tune.
and also I love the fact that you should obviously never go anywhere without a towel, which is actually works constantly in life. And I'm trying to get Nicholas in the bar to create an alcohol-free Pangalactic Gargle Blaster. It's Towel Day on the 25th of
Oh,
May, but I think I'm going to have to wait again till next year because it's not a real drink. It's a description of basically the hangover that the alcoholic drink gives you. Therefore, what's the alcohol-free equivalent? And it has to be more creative than just putting some weirdly named things together.
yeah.
So it needs a little bit more work. All
Okay.
right, Neil, we'll work on this. We'll
Stay
work on this
tuned.
together.
Let's do another project, Laura, because we don't have enough.
Yeah.
What's the saying that you live by and one that you put in the bin?
My new saying that I really love, which is if something's worth doing, it's worth doing badly.
Okay.
And I know that that's very controversial, but it's better to go for a short walk than to not go for a walk at all.
Yes.
And it's better to eat some of your day healthily, even if you can't resist the day old baked goods that the cafe next door brings in at the end of each day by the time you get to the end of the day. So,
Okay.
and actually that saying takes quite a lot of pressure off because I misspell everything. I'm working too quickly. I don't care anymore. So actually things don't have to be perfect. If you want to get things done, then you have to let go of that perfection. So I that saying's been very helpful for me.
Hmm.
So there
One
we
that you
are.
put in the bin?
Live, laugh, love, that one. I bloody hate it.
It's horrendous.
It's horrendous, but does make for beautiful, ironic home furnishing gifts for friends.
Blech.
But I just no,
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 no.
no, no.
What has been when it's tattooed, it's the worst.
Yeah. Oh no, I can see a fake tattoo coming on now.
Please, please, please do it. Please do it. What has been the best adventure of your life so far?
Oh man, this is I don't know this. I don't know. What's been the best adventure of my life so far? Giving up drinking was by far those months after giving up drinking was just an amazing adventure of discovering of like it was like 100 little epiphanies. It was
Hmm.
amazing.
Yeah,
And it coincided with such a burst of energy because it felt like I've been lifted out of this quagmire that I learned so much about myself in such a short amount of time. It was absolutely amazing.
yeah.
Um, so I still think it's the most transformative thing that I've done. But
Same,
but yeah.
same. It's so, I would just want more people to know about it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And um but it's not the same experience for everybody
No,
either
of
because
course.
not necessarily everyone was big as a lush as we were, Neil.
That's so true. What three words would you use to describe you and your origin story?
I would say collaborative, an activator, as
Oh,
opposed to an activist, I think definitely more activator, and heretic.
okay. Love those.
Yeah, I think
Love
we need to
those.
be heretical. We need to constantly push against the grain.
I love it. Let's fast forward a bit. What exciting things do you have coming up?
Um, exciting things. I've got some scary things. I'm going to be 50 next week. I don't quite know how that happened. I used to be one of the youngest counsellors in the country, and then they slowly stopped referring to you as a young counsellor, and then you're a younger counsellor, and then suddenly you're the age of the average counsellor, and it's not important anymore. And that's where I'm edging to now. It seems like a really weird and big milestone. My 40s has gone incredibly quickly, and I don't I wasn't quite ready for this. So that's quite scary. Um Other things that are quite exciting. Um I don't really know. I don't know, Neil.
Have you got a break coming up? Because that would be pretty exciting for you.
No.
Okay. Hopefully you could get one in at some
I'm gonna
point.
try and get one in. I'd like to. I am hopefully gonna organise a family holiday next year because my mum's 70 next year. So Iceland's been on the cards for a while. So I think we're
Oh,
gonna look at that.
lovely, lovely. Get that in. Through all of the craziness, what brings you joy?
Oh, what brings me joy? Well, I've now got cats. What's brought me the most joy recently is, and I'm going to say this because everyone always feels very sorry for my partner, you see, but it's his flat, and he always wanted to live alone, but I've ended up here. And I don't like not being house captain, Neil. It's really difficult. I like to be in charge of where everything is and decorating everything. And if it's not my flat, but I have taken control of his lighting system with Alexa. So it's given me immense joy to
You're
have.
you're you're
I
such a
know
techie. You're such a techie.
and evil. Poor you see. It's terrible. So that's given me great joy recently. And I really love the other thing I really gives me great joy is I love socializing with people before work. So one of my
Okay.
favorite things is to take people for a swim at Shoreditch House and have breakfast. You've done 2 hours of wonderful socializing before you start work. And for me, this is like um, really rebellious and abnormal because most people are rushing to get to work and they do their socializing in the evening with loads of booze, whereas having done some amazing socializing in the morning feels wonderful.
I still need to get that swim in with you. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's
absolutely.
on the
It's
cards.
it's prized.
All right, I've got a question I'm going to throw in that just as we're talking about fast forwarding is what are your hopes for Club Soda?
It's interesting because, I talk about the fact that we started off as health tech and we're now running a shop and a bar. And I'm not a natural shop or bar owner, but the space is there for a reason. It's to educate the consumer, it's there to
Hmm.
educate the trade. Um, but I still don't quite know, even after all this time, what it is that I'm meant to be doing. And I did think for a short while that we should become the wholesaler and the distributor so that we could ensure that everybody could get the product. But actually, it's a really, really hard thing to do, and you need lots of money to do it, and we just don't have that. And so, actually, I've done a little bit of stepping back and reflecting on what it is that we're good at, what it is that does give us joy at work, the things that we do, and we're rethinking what it is that we do as a business. um Maybe bringing back some things we did before we had the shop, and also some things, so if we talk about, exciting things coming on the horizon, we're having our first ever conference for low and no brands in September. It's one that we were due to do in 2020 before lockdown. But that really excites me because the agenda not only has stuff on it for those brands that are launching and brands that are growing, but we've got a whole normalizing part of the agenda, which is, it's okay to have loads of alcohol-free drinks in the market, but if we can't normalize drinking them and if we can't work out how to make these a normal part of society, then we're never going to get to where we want to be.
Yeah, that's fact. That's a fact. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Love the direction of that. Amazing.
So, and that conference is definitely in my wheelhouse and is definitely,
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying organizing it, and so that's cool.
What are the
Whereas
dates?
don't ask me to make you a cocktail because I can't do it.
I'm hopeless at cocktails. What are the dates for the conference?
10th of September.
Amazing. Love it. What practical takeaways do you have for anyone listening who wants to maybe carve out a career in inclusion? And I know that not necessarily got a career in inclusion, but you are creating inclusive spaces. So
Without a doubt, ultimately, Club Soda is still an equalities campaign, right? Because
yeah.
it's about everybody having an equality of experience. And whilst it is adjacent to, campaigning on equalities around particular groups of people or particular rights for groups of people, I find it ridiculous that you could go to an LGBT awards where they're giving out awards for drug and alcohol addiction, but then you can't get an alcohol-free drink. What does that
Hmm.
say about us as a society? And so sometimes it doesn't have to be the big headline that you're going for. You can do something within an equality space that's very, very specific and can be quite
Yeah.
niche. But by doing it, you could transform lots of people's lives and the experience that they have of a particular space. I've met loads of amazing people who do disability equality work in music venues. Just making music venues accessible to people with all sorts of disabilities and a whole range of neurodiversities is really, really important. And by doing that, they make it better for everybody. And so you don't have to tackle everything. You can, you know, um, look at a particular niche or a particular area that you think that you've got a particular expertise in, and then just push in there, and then you never know where it will take you.
That's it. As you were saying, you've been talking about this for 10 years and now you are where you are, but that's taken a lot of work to get there.
Yeah, but now also because of the fact that I sit on the Drinks Trust and I've got a reputation in the drinks industry is having its own Me Too moment at the minute.
Yeah.
And so I'm now part of a group of people who are trying to sort that out. So by being just in the room, and doing what I've been doing all this time, when something new arises where people want to take action, I can be part of that.
Yeah. Amazing. Final question for you. What words of wisdom or encouragement do you have for anyone out there to help get them to wherever they're going?
I think I'd always say that if you've got an idea, don't dismiss it, but go and talk to lots and lots of people and get their views on it. See which direction they can point you in, and get feedback on your idea so you can refine it. And work out how, most importantly, you can monetize it, right? So there are lots of sources of help out there. I do feel like getting started on your own idea or setting up a business is a bit like being a private investigator, because you're learning a whole new set of things, that you're always seeking out everything from the best bit of tech to use, or a platform, to join or whatever. But you normally find out those things from other people by spending time talking to them. So you don't always have to sit in a room behind a computer to set something up. Going out into the world and speaking to people and sharing that idea is really, really important.
Laura, thank you so, so much. I feel like I've got to know you so much better than I did. I'm so
Well,
grateful
when
for
when's
you
someone going to
sharing.
interview you, Neil, so that we get to do the same in
Don't know.
reverse?
We'll see. We'll see.
There,
We'll
there,
we'll
there
see.
needs to there needs to be a Neil episode.
Okay, I'll take it on board. But honestly, I've loved spending this time with you. Thank you so much for sharing so openly and generously.
And thank you for taking the time to do these interviews. I think they're great.
Always. Thank you. Cheers. It was so, so wonderful getting to chat to Laura. We often speak about kind of like, sober inclusion and, supporting Club Soda, and with the House of Happiness, we get to work together. So just to take this time to get to listen to Laura's story was brilliant. It was amazing to hear about the influences of her family, and where her strength in fighting kind of unfairness and injustice, and also, the way that her work ethic, Laura used the word slogger, and she really is. She works so hard with Club Soda, but that has been something that has been evident throughout her career, and even going back much further than that to, all the things she did during school, for the environment, and, kind of showing up for, going to Arsenal stadium just so that there was a girl there, and just wanting to be counted and making sure that other people are counted as well. That advocacy really, really shines through. So yeah, Laura, thank you so much. Always so grateful for you, and your time and your generosity with your support and enthusiasm. If you haven't been to Club Soda, you can find it on Drury Lane in Covent Garden. They have the best selection of alcohol-free drinks. There is something for everyone. I go there regularly. It's a wonderful place. It's an off license, it's a tasting room, and it's a gorgeous event space as well. So do check out Club Soda. They have literally changed so many people's lives. And so all the support and attention and appreciation that they get, they truly deserve. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Please like and subscribe, share it with anyone you feel might be interested in listening, and tune in soon for more amazing conversations on Pause and Rewind. Cheers.